everyone. Thank you for coming. The meeting is called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Diane Knoll, Clerk Treasurer of Montauk, will start us.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. While we wait for more commissioners to arrive, this is an executive board meeting for lack of a quorum for the full commissions. There are some agenda changes and announcements. Okay. You want me to mention this?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've, the first agenda that was sent out, we've moved, well, it's the printed agenda, we're moving 11.4 closer to the front, right after the approval of minutes, so to speed this up and get it in front of the two presentations.
And if I could just draw your attention, there is a revised agenda from what was sent out about a week ago. The agenda items have not changed. The agenda was just updated to reflect the action of the Technical Planning Committee, which just met on Tuesday. So items are the same, but it's been updated to reflect TPC. So you should have in front of you a revised agenda. If any of you have the agenda that are not at the table, there should be copies in the back, but again, the agenda items are the same.
Okay. Public comment. We have two on the sign-up sheet. First is Zuli Alvarado from Gary, Indiana, on Broadway INDOT. Zuli?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to comment this morning. And particularly, I wanted, as a resident of the city of Gary, want to comment to the special address to INDOT. This past Saturday, I had heard a lot of comments about Broadway Street, and we were really excited about all the work that has been done or is being done on Broadway. One of the major concerns is as we think about that the hearing was, and that I actually saw this past Saturday as I drove block by block and looking at the ramps that have been done. And just from the eyesight, I was saddened. I was very saddened about the type of work. Some of those curbs I would not dare roll up or encourage anyone to get up on them. Some, I understand this, from my eyesight, I can see some city's responsibility to maintain some of those. There's gravel, grass growth, but with INDOT, I would say that it was obvious that was not work that I would say that an agency such as that would like to have the name attached to it. So the reputation of INDOT, the reputation of the city of Gary, and the residents all suffer. So I really encourage INDOT to go back and review all of that, go block by block. I went all the way to 50 from the corner of where City Hall is all the way to 53rd. And I would say it's like every one of them would need some thorough looking through. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Jim Nowacki from the city of Gary about INDOT.
Good morning, Mr. President. I brought my timer with me. Starting it. My name's Jim Nowacki. I'm a resident of the city of Gary. And today, the Hammond Times had editorialized that if projects in our city, routine projects in our city were done to a better standard, if we strove to find a way to do simple things well, that the more complex things would come easier for us. And of course, I've been coming to this meeting for many years, and I've never requested anything at this meeting that wouldn't be considered something routine, something normal, something that would be average, and something that would be expected in all of your communities, but we find that lacking in our city. You heard earlier comments made regarding the Broadway project, you know that that's been an old saw for me. And at the last meeting, I actually had some favorable comments regarding NDOT and some of the work they were doing to remediate the mistakes that the contractors had made previously. Well, I rescind those comments from last month. Just a week ago, we had a small rain in the city, and just where NDOT had put in a brand new sewer, tore up the street for 3 weeks, had the contractors put in a new sewer to alleviate the flooding right in front of the Genesis Tower at 6th and Broadway. So at that intersection on the west side of the street, we now have 3 brand new sewers installed. And I have to tell you that after this small rain, the residents complained that the flooding had never been worse. The flooding was all the way over the street, over the curb, over the sidewalk, and right to the front door on Broadway and the front door on 6th Avenue. If you can imagine, this is after NDOT had come in and spent a great deal of time and money to remediate that situation. Now the problem is this: the contractors allow all the debris to go down into the sewers. In other words, in your communities, you know that they use some provisions so that silt, etc., doesn't go into the sewers. You know that happens in all your communities, but not in ours. Matter of fact, one example we have at 7th Avenue, and I've complained about it before this board, where there's an existing sewer that the contractor paved right over. Now, I had dug it out so the contractor could see it because it had debris on it, and yet they paved right over it. I dug it out again, and just last week, when the contractors were repairing the striping along one of the crosswalks, they took the debris from the grindings and put it right into the sewer. I've got a picture of it. They used the grindings to cover up the sewer. I've got some pictures of it. Now, I know that's hard to believe, but if you would just walk that street like we have to walk it, or traverse that street, you'd realize my time is up, but this board has some responsibility to hold NDOT responsible for their work in our city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Everyone received the minutes, and we now have a quorum for the full commission, so we are now on a full commission.
Mr. Chair, I move that the minutes be approved. I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? They're approved. So now we have 11.4. Yes? Right. So this is the City of Gary's appeal on 2 project scope changes. It's pages 18 through 36 plus the addendum. Charles. Yep. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning. TPC and as well as T-Rock have approved the excuse me, this is the amendment?
11.4.
This is the
Gary.
Okay. Yesterday we sent out a presentation. TPC had asked that we sent out a white paper and we sent out a presentation. Most people have received it, and actually there's copies outside. If anybody needs a copy, please raise your hand.
It's outside of your packet. I don't know. So,
Hire somebody to explain to everybody.
you want it? Yeah.
Sure. Let me. So there's some confusion about these. So 11.4 was moved up at the beginning. We'll still come back to the other items on the Technical Planning Committee. So it's the last item under Technical Planning Committee. And the agenda items being moved up at the request of Mayor Freeman Wilson. These are projects that have been making an appeal to you. This is really something that has not happened here before in this way. It's just, Charles will explain the history of it. But essentially, you take action on amendments to the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, often. This is a situation where something has been requested at the Transportation Resources and Oversight Committee level. The City of Gary appealed that action to the Transportation Planning Committee, who sustained the action of the Transportation Resources and Oversight Committee. And the City of Gary would like to appeal that decision further up to the Commission. I've just given you the process in a nutshell of why this is now before you. So what you have that Charles will walk through is an addendum that we put out to try to clarify what the actual decision points are to this Commission, what is actually being asked of the Commission. And if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, if Charles could maybe walk through this, if this sounds good to you, Mayor. Charles walks through this framing of the request, and then I think the mayor would like to be able to address the commission. Does that sound like a good way to go? So, Charles, do we have this on the screen by any chance? If we don't, you do have a handout if you can follow along. Okay, thanks, Mitch. Charles, I would go ahead, but this is what we're referencing is this 11 by 14, 8.5 by 14 document.
Okay, back in 2017, the City of Gary requested scope changes to 2 of their projects in the program. These were projects that had languished and were not moving. The city had indicated they didn't have the funding, their portion of the funding. So they were requesting to change the scope of 2 projects programmed in the 2018 to 2021 TIP. In response, the Transportation Resource Oversight Committee, Lake Reporter, had drafted a policy regarding such requests. The City of Gary made their request under this policy at the March 2018 T-ROC meeting. T-ROC requested the City of Gary to give public notice of the proposed changes before the proceedings. Now, the City of Gary and NIRPC ran concurrent 30-day public comment period on these 2 projects, or these 2 projects changing scope. No comments were received. The City of Gary continued to pursue the use of this policy at the July 2018 T-ROC meeting. T-ROC approved 1 project, and that was the moving the funds from 15th Avenue to Airport Road. They took no action, or came to a decision of no action on the second proposal, and that had to deal with control. And they denied the third, which was the other half of the Ridge Road. So last Tuesday, the City of Gary appealed to the Technical Planning Committee on, like I said, last Tuesday. The Technical Planning Committee voted to uphold T-ROC's decision and requested the Commission's direction on the approved policy of project scope changes. There are two things going on here. One, there's a policy proposal. TPC requested that the Commission weigh in on the T-ROC and the Lake T-ROC's approved project and scope change policy that is found in the packet. The second is the project proposal. City of Gary would like the Commission to appeal to the Commission made by the lower committees. So, policy proposal action, in a nutshell, is either a vote to adopt the policy. It sets a precedence that funding may stay with the municipality rather than with any given project. This would allow communities to come forward with a project that they had put forward and no longer wanted to do it. They could change this. A vote to reject this policy means that T-ROC as well as TPC will deal with all scope and project changes on a case-by-case basis in the future. The second is the project proposal action. A vote to sustain T-Rock and TPC would result in roughly $5 million will stay with the Ridge Road project. Currently, that project is in 2020. However, in talking with the city of Gary, we look at options of moving that project out. A vote to reverse the T-Rock and TPC's recommendation would mean that the $5,060,000 would be split over 2 new projects, which the city has indicated that they have resources to fund. The details on those project changes are found on page 6. And I can go through those, but I think everybody, thank you, Mitch.
Mitch, can you go back to the beginning of the slide deck, since now we've got that up? And maybe this will be helpful to just run through again what Charles just iterated. So if you go to the next slide, Mitch, thanks. That's a bunch of text, but it's basically the process of how we got here, which is appeals from the Transportation Resources and Oversight Committee to the Technical Planning Committee, now appealing to the city of, to the commission. The mayor will present the whole, I think, the request here, but I'm just trying to frame this a bit. The situation is that a project is being asked, that was funded, is being asked to be replaced with another project under the same funding. That's essentially what's happening. So next slide, and I'll just breeze through these as a recap. 2 requests are being asked before you. One is related to a policy that was approved by the Lake Porter T-Rock, not by the Port T-Rock, but has to do with a policy that they adopted for handling project swaps like this, okay? So that policy is in your packet, and we can reference that in detail in a moment. The second proposal then is the actual project request of the city of Gary. Next slide. To break those 2 decisions down into the 2 decision points, one related to that policy, either say, yes, we endorse this policy, or we don't endorse the policy that was adopted by the LaPorte Lake T-Rock. They asked for your weigh in on that. That's one decision point. Next slide. The second decision point is the actual request from the city of Gary, which is the movement of these projects to from what they were originally applied for. And then the last slide is the detail of the funding involved. So maybe if we leave that up, Mayor, is this a good opportunity? Sure. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you want me to back in sort of the history of
Sure.
really quickly? So for a lot of us who have been here for a while, the way that these things used to work was Gary Evers had a spreadsheet in his head, and we had money for a 4-year tip. Our tip that we vote on is for 4 years. And a while back, they said that it had to be fiscally constrained, so that it's a budget that's 4 years long, and things have to fit in that. Before Gary left, FHWA instituted some more rules for INDOT and us. One was to push us towards an online version of that spreadsheet, so more people could see what was going on. That fiscal constraint that we couldn't overspend our 4-year budget. We played that game by moving projects out of the 4 years. So we've done this with the Ileana in the past, where for a long time it was sitting outside the TIP. It was in the TIP, but not in the 4-year budget. And then INDOT from FHWA kind of said, you can't move money from year to year. You have to spend it or it's gone. And so those things were set in stone for us. And Blair Milo helped all of us reorganize our committees so that in the past, the old TPC would chew on that and argue about money, and then we would just vote on it. And we made a new committee structure that is T-Rock, that is making those monetary decisions and arguing about money. Then it goes to the new TPC, where they make sure that it fits and conforms with the 2040 plan and all of that, and then it comes to us. So in the past, many years ago, various communities have had pots of money that they could either use or maybe reuse on something else. And so there's been efforts to, one, get you to spend the money, do the project that you said you were going to do, or use it. So these systems are in place, and this, what is before you today, is really the first sort of challenge of that. It's 10-year-old money, 10-year-old money?
Yes.
10-year-old money of $5 million for a project that is now being asked to be spent on 2 different projects in the city. And so that's sort of what's before you is, do we test the rules? Do we make the rules? How does this go?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, yeah.
is there a recommendation that came from you and Ty? I mean, has this happened before?
So wait, so that has what Gary is requesting happened before? I would say the answer is yes. Has it happened since all these rules have been, and this new structure? No.
How did we used to deal with this?
Gary would find money, Gary Evers would find money to, move things around and ask people to, shift things. He used to ask me, we've got this money that we're holding for your project, do you want to spend it or not, or push it out a year?
Do you just keep on
I'm not aware of, sorry.
If I could weigh in,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, essentially the city of Gary is caught in between what used to be done administratively and now what is being done through the T-ROC and TPC committee. And this policy, as you note, is a draft. We haven't even implemented the policy yet. That's why it's before you. And all we're saying is that this was something that Gary Evers suggested to us, as he has done to many communities throughout the course of this body. And when he suggested it to us, we said, yes, we have 2 projects that we believe are even more transformational from a regional standpoint, more beneficial from a regional standpoint than the Ridge Road project. And namely, those projects, actually there were 3 projects because there was a third pot of money. I'm not really talking about the money that was moved from 15th, or that we're proposing to move from 15th and Martin Luther King Drive to the airport, because that was voted on favorably by the T-ROC committee. But there are 2 other projects. One is Lake Street, which is a part of the NIRPC South Shore project. And clearly, not only is that significant to Gary, but it's significant to Lake Porter and LaPorte County in that it is a part of the overall change. The second is the project on 15th and 65. The HMD trucking project, something that has been invested in by the state, that has been invested in from a private standpoint, and something again that creates jobs. And actually, it's not just HMD, it's another prime project, and I'm using prime as a euphemism, that will be announced shortly and that will open in November 1st, but both are significant job creators for the city of Gary and the region. The other significant aspect of both projects is that they scored better than the Ridge Road project. And the other aspect is that it has driven millions of dollars in private investment. And so we are simply saying that based on what had previously been a practice, and admittedly, this was a practice that we were told at some point, we being the body, the NIRPC body, that Gary Evers should not have done it or should not have the latitude to do it. So with a change, I believe, of going from that administrative practice to creating a policy, this is the first time that this policy is tested. And we are simply asking that if we're going to go to the policy, let's implement the policy. And if that policy is implemented, then let's uniformly implement that policy. And if you look at that and look at the scores of the projects, then I think that it would be very difficult to argue from saying that Ridge Road would be more beneficial to the region as a whole than these two projects. The other thing that I would say is that in '07, when these projects were in fact approved, the bottom fell out. It fell out for many of us, but there is no argument, I think, that the city of Gary saw a disproportional impact from property tax caps. So money that existed in 2007 did not exist subsequent to that, and that was why the can was kicked down the road. In fact, the city lost $50 million as a result of the property tax caps in that 1 year that they were fully implemented. Notwithstanding that fact, I would say that if this project is forced to stay with Airport Road, we will have the match to implement the project. So I don't want this to appear that if that money is not used for Airport Road or is not used for the other projects and has to be used for Ridge Road, that the money will become available generally, because I think that's part of some of the discussion or the belief by the TROC and or TPC committee. We'll have the match to use.
Okay. So Tom, hang on. Ty suggested that I might possibly be wrong at one point. So I'd like to clarify that because I said that it had happened in the past, and I don't know that for a fact, and neither does he, that projects changed. They changed scope in the past, but he's not sure that they've actually changed projects in the past. Tom, you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question, and the mayor might have answered it, because on Tuesday, this policy said it was a draft policy, and I noticed this morning it says that it's an approved policy.
Sorry for that confusion. We wanted to clarify that this was actually adopted by the Lake Porter TROC, but that's all that has endorsed that policy. So it's, and we maybe should have left the word draft in there in regards to anybody else, but that Lake Porter and just the Lake Porter TROC. And again, just for clarification, there's a separation between LaPorte and Lake Porter because of two different urbanized areas. So that's why those need separate. The Lake Porter TROC did adopt this as their policy in response to the city of Gary's request to change the projects, as I understand the history. But it's draft in the sense that you have not endorsed it. Nobody else has endorsed it beyond the Lake Porter TROC.
Right?
I certainly agree with the mayor's comments. My only concern is that we don't lose sight of the importance of Ridge Road. Ridge Road is a main artery that connects all the way from state line to Ward County. If there is a need for redirecting traffic of I-94, Ridge Road could be a primary way of moving traffic. I just don't want to lose sight of the importance of dealing with the Ridge Road improvements. We have done our part connecting it to I-65, and I think it's important that we don't lose sight of that.
And I want to certainly acknowledge that, Mayor, we have done a portion of those improvements. It's one of the issues that we face is that the money for the match is more readily available. It's not that it's easily done on the Ridge Road corridor, or that it would languish, but it's more readily available in these two projects because of existing tax increment financing districts. It doesn't mean that we'll let the Ridge Road project die on the vine. We've already begun the implementation.
Yeah, sorry, Jeff.
I just had a couple of questions. TPC's position on this, have they spoke about this at all, and can we allow them to? I know it's on some of the stuff here. And when if we do vote to reverse this and allow the money to be split, who's going to be accountable, or who's going to govern those funds? Is that going to be the city of Erie, or are we going to still have control over that?
I can answer the governing, because these are federal funds, so all the rules still apply, so it still would be, quarterly meetings, and no federal funds have been spent on this. That was clarified also with Joyce Newland, who may or may not be on the phone, from FHWA, but no federal funds have been spent on the Ridge Road, which, if they had, it wouldn't be able to be moved without paying those back, but no federal dollars have been spent.
And I'd also like to reiterate what the mayor said on the US 6 corridor, because we're seeing a lot of improvement in that Porter County, and we'd like to continue to see that grow there. And I know that that's a major artery for us and a major growth artery in our communities also. So I do think that affects us. I definitely don't want that stuck on the back burner.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Sorry, yes.
I have some concerns about this as well. As you know, I'm on a special task force. I chair it for the bylaws. And one of the things that's come across, that's been apparent to me, is that we created these structures, which was the heavy lifting that Mayor Milo did for us, now Secretary. And I appreciate that, but I don't think it ever was clear that they had the authority to set policy that the full commission didn't embrace, or the executive committee. So that's an issue of whether or not they should be able to set policy that isn't formally ratified or approved by the full commission or the executive committee. I just think that needs to be dealt with. Notwithstanding, I do believe that they should be able to formulate a policy and recommend it to us, because they're the people who are professionals and experts. So I'm not denying the expertise at that level. I just want accountability in our governance structure. Having said that, I also agree with the comments about Ridge Road being an artery because of its linkages, and that's a critical part of it. But my concern is the TPC's actions based on their belief that it didn't, this policy, or also that it didn't comport with, because their level should have been about comporting with the comprehensive plan that's in place. And I'm confused because, at least on one of these, it does appear that if we're going to make evidence-based decisions, which I thought we were committed to, and is part of the federal funding structure, the scoring seems to argue for at least the lakefront streets, complete streets, to be given some greater deference simply because the scoring is significant. I can't really pull, I guess, the proposed change too, but I know that this looks like it's going to become sort of truncated, through some, but that's one of my questions about part of the rationale that went into the deliberation at the TPC level. Was it because they wanted to affirm the work of the T-ROCs? I also am concerned that T-ROCs aren't uniform. I understand why they may not be, because LaPorte is a different catchment area, but I am concerned about what the rationale was. Was it conforming to its belief it didn't satisfy? Complete Streets is consistent with our 2040 plan, significantly consistent. My community's benefited from that consistency, so I'm a little concerned about that vote. I don't really want to intrigue into the motives, but or inquire into the motives, but I am concerned about what was the rationale for that. Was it deference to the T-ROC recommendation, or which I think should be given some weight? At the TPC level, you really are you're sort of the last reviewing step to make sure all the policy processes have been followed, and then you're supposed to primarily look at, is this still consistent with our big plan?
So I was lucky enough to chair the TPC, and Kevin owes me a lunch, but the TPC, I was not a voting member. The voting was clarified who could vote, and it was voted 7-2. And the motion was to not reverse the T-ROC decision, to move it to this body and ask for clarification for T-ROC going forward. And because TPC was torn on how do you enforce draft policy for the other part of your question. So it's not a policy written in stone that has been endorsed by this body. it is a committee of this body that's making recommendation. They made their own policy rules, which sound good, but we haven't voted on them yet. And so they are not official rules, and so
That answers
everybody
my
was
question.
asking for clarification, and Charles wants to say something, but before you do, it was sort of like, you're a parent and you have a child, and do you give permission and then change the rules, or do you change the rules and then decide? And that's sort of the dilemma that we're in right now. Charles?
One of the concerns, Commissioner Griffin, about the Ridge Road is, the scope of Ridge Road is road reconstruction. Okay, 15th Avenue Gateway is a road reconstruction, but East Lakefront Complete Streets is not a road reconstruction. So we might be comparing apples to apples, but we're looking at Gaylord versus McIntosh, or some other varietal. So that was one of the concerns that T-Rock had.
I like Granny Smith's.
Well, if it was a Granny Smith, it'd be okay with you.
To use your metaphor. But how do you explain to, Mr. Chairman, with your leave? Thank you. How do you explain the scoring? I understand that reconstruction should have some more heft in our scoring system, but according to the documents here, there was a significant score, 67 out of 100 for the Lake Streets Complete Streets project. Is that not correct?
Those were the scores that were given to us by the city of Gary.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
So
That's
when we
not
asked-
staff scoring?
No. When we asked the scoring, we asked the engineers for Gary to restore those projects, ones that they proposed. The projects that they proposed, we asked them to score those projects with the same scoring credentials that were done on Ridge Road,
Okay.
as well as 15th Avenue intersection.
Do you have any reason to believe that they did not use the same kind of metrics that all engineers would use?
I do not read, I believe that they would have used the same metrics.
So we have no reason to believe that they're not a valid metric.
Correct.
Okay. So again, I'm left with, if we're supposed to do evidence-based, tell me from your standpoint why I should be considering reconstruction versus non-reconstruction in the case of these scores.
Could I clarify? I think that Charles is referencing the scores, and if this is helpful to understand, when he was talking about the apples to apples, reconstruction versus reconstruction, he was referencing the draft, the Lake Porter T-Rock policy, which has one of their criteria that they've established in their policy, draft policy, that for a project swap, if you want to call it that, to happen, should be of a similar like. So
And-
reconstruction to reconstruction, that's what he's referring to.
So
He's not
that's what you're
referencing
talking
a
about.
higher score or referencing to
Okay.
that, he's referencing the policy.
And just a point of clarification, Lake Street is absolutely reconstruction for anybody who's been on Lake Street in the last 2 or 3 months. It is a part of a continuing reconstruction of that street.
Well, this is going to sound very in the weeds, I beg everybody's pardon, but if Ridge Road is a reconstruction, you will recapitalize that and it will get a new useful life. But will Lake Street get a new useful life in your capital asset records? Because if it will, then that does constitute reconstruction. If it won't, it's just maintenance and there'll be no change in the asset record that I assume is being maintained for that part of the inventory. Now, that's
I would
really the
refer
weeds,
to our
but it's the
engineer.
finance people here, they know what I'm talking about.
And our engineers are saying, yes, it would.
Oh, so Lake would become, you would give it new life. In
Yes.
effect, it would start a new, whatever your capital asset life is for that.
Yes.
Then they're both reconstruction, in fact.
Yes.
So it would be consistent with the proposed policy.
Okay.
Can I ask just a question? With the deficits that we're experiencing, is this going to have any negative impacts on other community projects that are already approved and already scheduled out, calendar year? I just want to make sure that,
So who wants to answer that, Ty or Charles?
I'll go ahead and answer that. I have talked with the city of Gary, and we proposed, in fact, I have a couple proposals before T-Rock to deal with the deficit. For those of you who don't know, the spending plan for the surface transport infrastructure, in 2019, I've got $5.7 million deficit. In 2020, I've got 9.7. In 2021, I have $3.2 million deficit. In 2022, I'm in the black, but one of my proposals was not to eliminate any projects, just taking projects and discussing with the communities and looking at their risk, looking at where they fall in the letting, and if there's any personal bias with the community for or against that project. And Mayor McDermott did send a letter on one of the proposals I had proposed moving one of their projects out. And they sent a letter, so we looked at keeping that project where it is. Now that being said, I have talked with the city of Gary, and both proposals, the Ridge Road is moved out of the TIP into an illustrative year, into 2022. Currently, I've talked with them. The Martin Luther King Avenue, 15th Avenue, Martin Luther King, that remains in the TIP. But again, what I've proposed, I've shared with everyone on T-Rock, as well as anyone who would like it, I've shared with them. And that's still in flux, we're working that out.
This doesn't take from another community. This money was here. So it's either Ridge Road or these other projects. It doesn't, now you can balance the budget any way you choose, but we're not taking from another community doing this. So I just want to be clear on that.
So I'm not saying that, I'm just saying, does it have any negative impacts on the funding in the TIP for other projects that have already been calendared out?
No.
But I have a question now and the question is, if the money from Ridge Road is moved to those, the money for Ridge Road goes away.
Yes, the Ridge Road project would be eliminated.
Yep, and so in part, question to yours, it would help the fiscal part, the constraint, because it would split it, but it hurts Ridge Road in that they would need to reapply for a project because there's no money there for it. So it doesn't keep that $5 million and move it out to 2022. In Ridge Road, $5 million goes away and goes into those two projects, right?
Correct.
That's true.
Yeah.
How much time is Gary going to get penalized if we don't support the mayor on this? She'd have to go back in line basically for the two projects he wants to do, right?
Yes.
How much time penalty is that for the mayor?
2023, 2020, potentially, after the...
Yes, 2023.
5 years.
At least.
Yeah, I think that's important.
It is.
Do we want to wait 5 years to see Gary try to rebuild himself, or do we want to help Gary? She's the mayor. This is what she wants to do. And I think we all agree that we need to support Gary. We want to, sorry Mayor, see you in 2023. That doesn't seem like a fair answer to me.
May I speak? And I appreciate Jeff stepping in for me. I had two conflicts with county meetings that I had to be at. Already continued one of my items for the county commissioners to another meeting for TPC. Jeff and I talked extensively about what was kind of going on. We're making transitions now with the new federal guidelines. And I think T-Rock, in all earnest, was trying to create a policy. It wasn't adapted by us or by TPC at this point. And I had gotten recent introductions to it. I think you're correct. I think these are good projects. I think we can trust the engineers as far as the scoring. These things are going to be under the scrutiny of the engineers at T-Rock and public works people at TPC. So I don't recall them raising any questions or making issue with the scoring from that standpoint. One of the reasons I normally wouldn't be at T-Rock, but I'd heard about this and I had concerns about Ridge Road and its condition, and it had been suggested to me, and I don't know if this is the mayor's thinking, that somewhere along the line they're going to be looking at some of the state grants such as community crossings to deal with this. They know how important it is to the entire region as well, but at this time it seems like they can finance this. And one of my concerns coming in to TPC was we were holding money, communities were making money for extensive periods of time. And that's not the intent. We really need to spend that money out and keep moving forward. And when we're not spending the money and making these advancements, the increases in the cost catch up with us. And a lot of the valuations, the real estate, the preliminary engineering prices go up. So these all need to be done on a more timely basis than we have in the past. So that's why we're just trying to usher this along.
Mr. Dunn?
I just wanted to make an observation. I had studied over this some time, and you know, as we made great transition from one structure to another in NIRPC, as far as committees, operations were concerned, there were many questions. And I had the opportunity to be involved in the resolution of several of those questions. But I think it's probably specious for us to hypothesize over what Gary Evers should have, would have, could have, or did do at this point. We're in another era, and we're working under another structure, and we're trying to make it work fairly. And I think bringing him up when he has no opportunity to defend himself or to explain his actions is not really fair to him. So I think I would leave him out of the discussion for my part. I believe that the TPC did do due diligence as they understood their role and their responsibilities. I think their recommendation was made in all sincerity with their understanding of their role. With respect to the mayor, and with all respect to the mayor, we all suffered in 2007 and didn't have the money to make matching grants. It wasn't just Gary, it was a lot of us, that when the economic crisis hit, we couldn't come up with matching. And Gary is in the position they're in now because they couldn't come up with the matching money when it was available. And that is not an unshared position. So we do understand it. We have great empathy for that. But it's not a unique situation to the situation we're talking about right now. So the tax caps hit everybody, basically. And we're either going to have a new structure and work with it, or we're not, and we get people to participate in committees and do their due diligence. And if we're setting a precedent here, I think we need to walk very lightly. We need to be very careful about any precedent we might set as far as taking the power away from TPC or T-Rock to do anything, and everything winding up here at the commission.
Mr. Okay, so hold on. Yes, Kerry?
Just to make it clear for us, for LaPorte County, this doesn't affect us. I'm not questioning the funding. My question is, if this policy had not been brought before us to vote for, I mean, are we going to be undermining all subcommittees that whenever they make a decision and it's brought here, they're going to say, well, we really want to do that? And that's my concern. Set it up for subcommittees to do the investigation and set those.
May I respond to my colleague?
Yes.
Chair? I take your point. I agree with the sentiment that says that once we equip these committees to do the heavy working, that there should be a degree of deference when they make a recommendation. But the absence of appeal would be a violation of our sense of fairness. That's one. Two, I don't think it ever was clear that they had the authority to set policy. They were to execute policy. Policy is by statute vested in this board for the executive committee. So that issue doesn't rise yet for me until they've got a legitimate policy that has been approved by either the executive board or the full commission. And so they're bringing us both. And for my position, I'm willing to act on the appeal today and not make it a precedent, because we're not saying we don't value what the committees have done, but I just saw the policy for the first time. And I really would like some time to deliberate on that. But I do want it to be understood that policies that are carried out on behalf of the full commission through its committee structure still need to have the imprimatur and the authorization of either the executive committee or the commission, and that's really the issue for me. And I have no problem with making an appeal to the full commission, because it's ultimately the answer for all of it. And I don't think that making a decision today says anything about the good work that the members of those committees have done. And I appreciate that they presented us with a written policy, because I still trust the staff working with those bodies to give us guidance on what they think ought to be the templates or the metrics that they use for decision making. But we do have new facts here about this that make me feel like I think we can take a legitimate step to deal with the appeal that's before us. And then I'd like some time to look at these policies, and I would ask staff with the lead of the chair and the full commission to allow these things to come back to us so that we can have some time to deliberate and then act on the policies themselves.
Mr. Chair. I think the mayor handled this the right way. I agree with Michael that the subcommittees aren't the end-all be-all, that people make mistakes, even in a court of law. If a judge makes a mistake, which happens, you have a chance to appeal. I think the mayor appealed to the full body, which is appropriate. I don't think that we should support the policy, but I do support Mayor Karen in this endeavor. I think she's handled it the right way. I think that the scores are higher, and I think that's very important. But, you know, so is it possible to reject the policy and still support this on a case-by-case basis?
Let me just say that I basically agree with Michael that the policy we should have more time to look at and vote on. I think there's a little bit of language in there, specifically the 5-year thing. The intent, as it was explained in TPC, was that basically to get your project done within 5 years. At the TPC, I asked how many projects were, how much of this old money is there? And there's only a few.
I have updated information.
Okay. How many?
Actually, I was incorrect when I at TPC. There are 23 projects
that are old?
That are older than 5 years. 5 years or older.
Okay.
13 of those projects are between 5 and 9 years old. 5 projects are 10 to 14 years old. 4 projects are 15 to 19 years old. And there's 1 project, Lake County, that is 20 years, older than 20 years.
Okay, and so that's part of the reason for the rules for the T-Rock is to, if somebody were to come back and want to change that, is it older than 5 years? And how old is this money? Because from above, FHWA is telling us we have to spend this money and we can't keep holding these projects, and that's what all these processes are for. But I think that the policies we all need to understand and vote on. But also what I said at TPC is that we are the elected officials and we are the ones that vote on these things. You know, the T-Rock and TPC are voting to recommend to us, but they don't have the authority that we do. And so it is up to us to make these decisions, and if it's on a case by case, then it is, but the appeal is possible. I have 2 hands. Jeff?
I just had a question for Kevin. I agree, Kevin, that these processes have drawn out several projects. Is this policy going to make snowballs a little bit more downhill, so to speak, for you guys with reorganizing these projects? Is this precedent for the first one, and then there's 45 or 50 more following this?
I really don't think that's going to be the case. Part of the problem is making the matches and coming up with right away. There's so many issues going on and reasons. What we're delving into now is just figuring out what happened to that project. But at this time, I'd just say that for the policy, my understanding, T-Rock can make a recommendation to TPC, and TPC would make a recommendation and forward to this body for any of the So there's a progression, and I confess, I think that's the first time I saw the policy when it said T-Rock the other day, and more so because of the issues we had with some of the communities at that time. I was there as an observer.
Jim? Well, I just wanted to say something in response to what Mr. Griffin said, and that is that this commission did vote for the new committee structure. And in that document that had the committee structures, the job descriptions were thoroughly reviewed on what that committee was to do. So this is not a surprise that they have taken the action they've taken because they've understood their job description. Now, whether or not we need further resolution of what that is, or we need a more detailed explanation of what their task is, I wasn't impugning anyone's right to appeal at anything. And I would resent the implication that I was. But I'm saying if we're going to make an exception, then we better clarify the rules.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's the problem. We don't have any rules. You have a new structure without any rules. The committee was not given any rules to operate under. And that's our job at the end of the day. And it almost seems unfair, although we did go by this draft rule to say, we've got to do the rules. Oh, here's a rule for this particular instance. I mean, if you have a new committee structure, you have to create a set of rules so that everybody knows what they're going to be governed by.
I think that's what I just...
Now, you said a job description, but that's not a policy.
The committee job description. But if we need to clarify the rules, then yes.
I think we can all agree we're going through growing pains, and that's, we know what we need to do by addressing these problems. They all come out, we start looking for the solutions. And I think that's our charge as committees and as a commission.
Nobody's arguing.
I know.
Okay. So, yeah, sorry.
Just in regards to that policy question, I'd be helpful to think about, because I understand this just came to you, as you said, just in terms of timing. I think we're looking at a new notice of funding availability in November-ish, right? So that gives the opportunity to be able to, there's programming considerations and probably guidelines that need to be developed that would be helpful to have in place for that notice of funding availability. So, in other words, this is not to be scary, this is actually helpful. There's a whole board of things that would be helpful to hammer out in anticipation of that notice of funding availability. This just being one of them. So taking time to develop that carefully would help us when we go out for that call for projects.
Is it possible we could get a copy of all those projects that date back like to 20 years?
Probably.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Tom?
Yeah, Chairman, and Charles might have answered this already when Mayor Bryan mentioned it. I know there's some concern here because we have, getting back to the original issue here today, we have 5 projects that are nestled down into 3 projects. And did I hear you correctly that if they move the Ridge Road projects to their new projects that they want to, and the Ridge Road comes off of the books and the mayor will find another funding source to do her project on Ridge Road? Is that correct to say?
Correct. Ridge Road would be eliminated. Ridge Road project would be eliminated.
And not that I don't think, and Mayor brought up there's been several comments, Ridge Road is definitely needs work. I know what she's talking about, I've been out there and drove it many times, and it definitely needs work, but you're saying it will come off of this list and take the DES numbers and put it on her projects that she's asking for. Is that correct to say?
That is correct. There will be no further project in the tip for Ridge Road.
And as far as you're concerned, you're not wanting to bump back any more projects because of that, because of the fact you would be taking Ridge Road out of that list.
T-Rock is working on projects that are going to be moved back. for whatever reason. Some projects that it works great with their communities. Their communities are fine moving their project back for whatever reason. The schedule, their funding, might be some funding issues. There might be some executive decisions that the community has to make. So for whatever reason, some communities are happy moving their projects back. And I'm discussing with all the communities because currently right now I'm going through the quarterly tracking meetings, which 4 times a year, Federal Highway requires us to meet with each of the communities and discuss all the projects that they have on the books. And right now we're doing that. We did one last Tuesday, a week ago Tuesday, one last Monday, and then the last one will be on Friday. And at those meetings, we're discussing all the projects and the status of all the projects and any issues that might be coming up with those projects.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Would you like to make a motion?
I would move that we accept the changes in the projects as outlined in the slide that is before you.
Second, Mr. Chairman. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just seek clarification. I'm looking at our packet on page 20. So the effect of voting in favor of this mean that proposed change 2 on that page will be voted in the affirmative to be approved, and proposed change 3 on that page will be voted to overturn that vote, that recommendation, and vote in the affirmative. Is that what the intention of that motion is? We're not voting on the policy.
We're not voting on the policy. We're voting on the proposed change 2 and 3.
Right.
Thank you.
To clarify, the change 1 at the top of that page is not.
Right, it got the outcome that was desired by all parties.
I have a question, then this vote will be an ad hoc vote for this situation, only not to set precedence for the policy coming. So, once we make this decision, is this going to bind us in any way, or?
You're going to have to ask somebody at a higher pay grade than me. Because I'm not an attorney or a judge, but I would say that the first part of your question is, yes, this is an ad hoc decision. As far as precedent, I reserve any opinion.
Well, my hope is that we'll get a chance to deal with the policy. I beg the chair's pardon, I'm sort of speaking without recognition. My hope is that we'll get a chance to take a look at that policy. I think that we need the staff and the professionals in those committees to make recommendations to us. We need to just do that. And I want to clarify something to my colleague and friend, Commissioner Tunn. Nothing I was saying should be construed as saying anything's wrong with the structure we established. I thought a lot of heavy lifting got done, and I love that structure. We're not just doing refinements. So to refine something that you think is good is just about moving from good to great, to borrow John Costas' phrase. And that's what I'm talking about too. So I do think that we need to look at those policies, and I know that Ty's remarks suggested that we need to feel some sense of urgency because of the new guidances or the new funding cycle. But Thomas Jefferson once said, delay is preferable to error, but not undue delay. So let's get a chance to actually have meaningful deliberation, but do deliberation with all due speed so that we can have something that's informed, adopted, and then those committees can have the guidance that they need to make to continue to do the good job they're doing.
To be clear, it's not urgent for quick action on this.
Okay.
So you can have a more full discussion on it. Time to think
I'm
about
just glad you gave me a chance to quote Jefferson. Thank you.
Gary?
Mr. Chairman, just for personal knowledge, I see this original project was awarded 11 years ago. I don't know if I missed the discussion. Why wasn't it ever fulfilled?
The downturn in the economy.
The lack of funding.
And lack of funding.
For Gary.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering, is there any other reason that T-Rock voted no, aside from this just being that their policy that they had created said that it wouldn't comply? Was there any other reason they voted no?
I did not attend T-Rock, and so I can't answer that question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
He was wondering if there was any other reason that T-Rock voted no.
Well, It was a very close vote from what I witnessed, and it was an issue of, they kind of prepared a policy that they thought we should start adhering to, and that affected their decision-making process, as far as I observed.
Mr. Chairman, I say that even though that was presented, there was some question as to what the 5 years was intended to mean and what it didn't mean. And was those voting were, even though they may have voted in the affirmative, they were, hoping for more guidance from the full commission.
Mr. Chair, I call the question.
Mr. Chairman, I would request a weighted vote.
Okay. We're prepared for a weighted vote.
So we need to pull up the spreadsheet for that, if somebody has something to that.
If I may, I just want to clarify, it's both will be on the project.
Right, yep, it's on the proposed change 2 and 3. There's one vote for those two, and that's the motion. And this will be a weighted vote.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Hollenbeck, maybe address the issue of this adoption or this ad hoc.
The question of precedent. If a precedent is established here, it's your own precedent, and you're perfectly prepared and able to change that as you progress through the process. There is value to precedent, but there's also value to being able to evaluate that and decide that it should be changed. So I wouldn't worry about this setting precedent. Precedent becomes relevant, play lawyer in the court system. If the Supreme Court establishes precedent, then the lower courts are pretty much inclined to have to follow that precedent. But the Supreme Court, who set the precedent, can change the precedent when it sees fit. In that sense, you're kind of the Supreme Court here, and you can change precedent. So I wouldn't worry that you're mired down.
That's been thoughtful, and a little bit further question, I'm just glad you clarified that. Thank you.
Okay, so for those who don't know, Beverly Shores has 613 people. This doesn't occur very often, but the commissioners that make up this body each represent a certain population, and so for any time anybody wants to, any commissioner can ask for a weighted vote, and then your vote percentage is tied to your population percentage of the whole region. So I guess we'll start alphabetically. It's been called the question.
It's just like that on the board.
Okay. So I will vote yes. My .079. You're almost there.
Mr. Chairman, I say that a vote of yes means that we are supporting the changes to allow these changes, the project changes that have been, where there was no determinative or dispositive vote, and where there was a dispositive vote recommending against.
So you'd have to explain what dispositive
Means
was, but they...
when you have a tie, nothing's been decided, it's non-dispositive.
Okay.
When you have a majority one way or another, it's been disposed of or dispositive.
Okay, so a vote yes would side with the mayor, who has requested that we approve these changes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, what about the change of the policy?
We're not voting
on the policy.
That's not up for vote right now. So Burns Harbor?
Yes.
Yes. Cedar Lake?
Yes.
Chesterton?
No, because the vote does not require the commission to clarify the work of these two, T-Rock and TPC.
Okay. Crown Point?
Yes.
Dune Acres? Dyer?
Yes.
East Chicago? Gary?
Yes.
Griffith? Hammond?
Yes.
Hebron?
Yes.
Highland?
Yes.
Hobart?
Yes.
Kingsbury? Kingsford Heights? Got to scroll down so I can see what's next. Taos? La Crosse?
Yes.
Lake County Commission,
Yes.
Lake County Council,
Yes.
Lake Station, LaPorte,
Yes.
LaPorte County Commission, LaPorte County Council.
Yes.
I didn't hear the LaPorte County Commissioner. There's no one here, so that, sorry. No, it's the one above, the county commission, that's, and that one is a yes. Long Beach, nobody's here. Lowell,
Yes.
Maryville,
Are you sure that only yes,
That's messed up, Joe.
it's, there's
They got everybody.
only votes voting yes should count yes.
correct.
Nice.
That's why I went back. That's why I went back.
There was another one.
Are you tracking the vote as well?
An absence
Go back to the
equates to a
beginning because
no.
we have assigned some yes votes to.
So who else was,
I don't,
I think
Tom brought it
I
up.
don't think Kingsbury.
right, Kingsbury and Kingsbury Heights.
Start over.
one person.
It's been requested by our attorney that I start over again and that you only put yeses in when it is a yes. Any absence is a blank. Sorry. How come this only happens when I'm the chair?
Because you're so equal to the task, Mr. Chair. Excellent, Chair.
I think I hold the record for the most weighted votes. Okay, start at the top. Beverly Shores still yes. Burns Harbor,
Yes.
Cedar Lake,
Yes.
Chesterton,
No, for the reasons given.
okay, Crown Point, Dune Acres, none. Dyer,
Yes.
East Chicago, blank. Gary,
Yes.
Griffith, blank. Hammond,
Yes.
Hebron,
Yes.
Highland,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Kingsbury, blank. Kingsford Heights, blank. Couts, blank. La Crosse,
Yes.
Lake County Commission,
Yes.
Lake County Council,
Yes.
Lake Station, blank. LaPorte,
Yes.
LaPorte County Commission, blank. LaPorte County Council,
Yes.
Long Beach, blank. Lowell,
Yes.
Maryville,
Yes.
Michiana Shores, blank. Michigan City,
Yes.
Munster, blank. New Chicago,
Yes.
Ogden Dunes, blank. Pines, blank. Portage, blank. Porter,
Yes.
Porter County Commission, blank. Porter County Council,
Yes.
Porter Township, Potawatomi Park, blank. Schererville,
Yes.
Schneider, blank. St. John, blank. Trail Creek, blank. Union Township,
Yes.
Valparaiso,
Yes.
Wanata,
Yes.
Westville, blank. Whiting,
Yes.
Winfield, blank. 3 County. There you go.
Whiting, yes.
Waiting.
Whiting, sorry.
Double votes, yes.
Yes, okay.
Joe's gonna vote yes.
Lake County thing.
There you go. So it's been passed, 69.06. Thank you. I apologize for taking that long, but it's, I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Chairman. I commend you on your everybody management of that vote. Thank you.
So the next thing on the agenda is the presentation by the Northwest Indiana Regional Economic Development Plan. Heather?
Mr. Chair, if I can, I just want to thank everyone, but I also want to thank the chair for moving this matter up. We have a major announcement in Gary this morning, so I apologize now for having to leave.
Thank you. Thank you for attending. Heather Ennis from the Northwest Indiana Forum. Thank you for being here this morning and your patience.
No problem, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for having us. As the Chair said, I'm Heather Ennis. I'm President and CEO of the Northwest Indiana Forum. I'm sure that you all know, but the Northwest Indiana Forum is the 7-county regional economic development organization. We represent Lake, Porter, LaPorte, Jasper, Newton, Glasscock, and Stark County. So a little bit larger geographic footprint than NIRPC, but we're delighted to partner with NIRPC and work on this regional economic development plan. I know some of you have heard about this, some of you have not. But let me just give you a brief overview of where we've been, and then I'll turn it over to our consultants to kind of bring you up to speed on where the process is. So at the end of last year, the Northwest Indiana Forum was talking about direction for the forum and realized you can't talk about this in a vacuum. We do not do economic development alone. We do this with many regional partners, and started talking about the things that were needed and how to move the region forward, how to help reverse the trend of population loss, how to continue to have job growth, how to increase average wage, things like that. We worked on this internally and tried to do it around our table and realized we needed some help. It's a bad idea when you need surgery to perform surgery on yourself. So we decided to seek outside help and really get some folks that have had some experience with this in other regions to come and work with us. So the forum is not working on this alone. We've done it with many regional partners. We've got a steering committee of 15. We've got a leadership committee of 54. Ty serves on our leadership committee. We've got Center of Workforce Innovations, NICD, One Region, RDA, all of the regional players, business community, a wide host of folks working on this. So it's been an exciting, as I said, we started kicking this off at the end of last year. Folks said you're never going to raise the money in order to get this accomplished. We had over 65 investors in this plan and overprescribed it within a month and a half of saying that you're going to do it. So the community thought that this was a necessary thing to do to create a regional playbook for economic development, create a regional plan that helps move us all in the same direction. So, we knew that we were missing that compelling, strong vision and that regional playbook. So we went out with an RFQ, got 8 respondents for our request for quote. 4 of them we thought were outstanding and really wanted to get to know them better. We did 4 phone interviews and narrowed it down to 2 candidates, and then decided that we would pick our top candidate out of that and do an in-person interview to see if their online profile matched their in-person profile. So we brought in TIP Strategies to meet with our group. They met with our regional partners as well, and we were wowed by them. The things that we found most important about the work that TIP has done is that they've worked with diverse groups before. We don't have a strong gravitational pull here in Northwest Indiana. We are 47 municipalities, 12 mayors, 15 economic development organizations. We are a very diverse area, and so getting somebody that had experience working with diverse regions was really important to us. The other thing that was extremely important to us is with their report, they put together an implementation matrix. We did not want this to be a study. We wanted this to be a plan. We wanted this to be something that we could use as a playbook to move the region forward. So we're very excited. Over the last 6-7 months, we have hosted over 50 meetings, and we've met with legislators, mayors, economic development professionals, healthcare industry, major business, small business, entrepreneurs, higher education, you name it. We have tried to exhaust these guys as best we can. So it has been a fun process. We tried to get on your schedule a little bit earlier, but our meeting dates didn't align with your schedule, so we appreciate the time to be here today. We know that it's been a somewhat long meeting already, so we'll try to be brief. I'd like to introduce Alex Cook and Jeff Marcel from TIP Strategies. We moved from this today to a leadership meeting to talk about the draft plan and what things are really going to firm it up. And then we will roll this plan out next month on September 13th at the Avalon. I have some flyers I'll leave about the event for those of you that are interested. I'll also send it to Todd so he can distribute it to all of you. But please note that the support that we've gotten from the municipalities, from the staff, from all of you has been outstanding. We really appreciate everybody's enthusiasm about this moving forward, and we hope that you'll be able to join us on the 13th as we roll this out. But note, the 13th is not the end of this. The 13th is the beginning of this. That's when the real work starts. This plan is a 5-year plan, but it will be modified. It will be adopted and moved forward, and different groups will pick up different pieces because none of us can do this alone. So I thank you for your time and attention, and I will go ahead and turn the floor over to Jeff and Alex.
Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Marcel. I'm a senior partner with TIP Strategies. I'm joined by my colleague, our senior consultant, Alex Cook. We are the TIP team that has had the opportunity to work with many of you. It's wonderful to see several familiar faces in the room. I was asked to give you a brief update in terms of the planning process and where we are at. If there's a question that you might have, I apologize. As Heather said, we've got a leadership team meeting, so I'll have to keep my comments fairly brief. But if there's a question that you have or something you'd like to share with us, we'll make sure that all of you have our contact information. We've been working very closely with Ty, and he's certainly got that. But if there's something you want to share with us that you think is important for us to understand as we're considering this large, broad, 7-county regional economic development strategy, we want to know that. Let me just give you a quick introduction so you have a sense about who we are. TIP Strategies is a 23-year-old economic development and workforce development strategic planning firm. All we do is work with communities to help them think through how to grow their local economies, how to create jobs, and generate investment in their communities. Over that 23-year history, we've worked in over 300 communities, over 40 states around the country. Typically, our clients are either cities, their counties, their states, and then sometimes they are regions, like in this project. And I will tell you, oftentimes it's the regional projects that are the most challenging, but they are also the most rewarding because it gives us an opportunity to encourage collaboration between the public sector and the private sector, the educational sector, and workforce and technical training sector, as well as nonprofits. And so it's been a wonderful experience over the last several months working with leaders throughout Northwest Indiana. I believe this is our 6th time in the region since February. And our planning process is really divided into 3 phases. I'll give you a quick overview. The first phase is what we call the discovery phase. That's where we do a tremendous amount of economic and demographic data analysis. We also do a lot of targeted industry analysis as well, because we're a data-driven firm as well. But that only tells us part of the story. We also try to make sure we understand about the thoughts and the opinions of leaders in the community, and that's one of the reasons why we've reached out to as many folks as possible. Once we have that foundation to truly understand what are the strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and threats that exist in the Northwest Indiana region, that allows us to build a plan on top of that. And so that takes us to the second phase. We're in the midst of the second phase of the planning process now. We reference it as the opportunity phase, and this is where we identify a regional vision. We set goals. You'll hear about that in just a moment. And then we begin to identify strategies that will help realize those goals and meet that vision in the future. That's where we're at with the process. We're now transitioning and we'll be moving into the implementation phase. We try to be as practical and pragmatic when we do this kind of work as we possibly can. And so over the next 30 days, or actually probably more like 60 days, we'll be working with community leaders in a whole wide range of areas to take the leadership role of various strategies that have been identified. We'll put all of that into an implementation matrix so everybody understands who's going to do what, when they're going to do it. We'll associate metrics and milestones attached over that 5-year horizon. And so that is the quick overview of the strategic planning process. Before we dive into what the draft vision and the draft goals for this plan, we did want to share a little bit of data. So I'm going to ask Alex to step up and just share a little bit of some of the information that we've gathered. And part of the reason why I think the region, the forum, but also the region asked for this strategic plan.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. As Jeff mentioned, we did a fairly exhaustive quantitative analysis as part of this process, and so we just wanted to share with you a couple of data slides to kind of highlight, I think, why this effort is important to create this economic development strategic plan. Again, this is for the 7-county regions, not just the 3 counties here along the lakeshore. And many of these will not be surprising to you if you look at the regional population. It has remained essentially stagnant for the last 5-6 years. If you look at it, when you index regional population growth to the Chicago MSA, which we pulled out the counties, the 4 counties in Indiana that are part of the Chicago MSA, to the state and to the S, and again, it shows that the regional population is falling behind. That's something that concerns everyone. If you look at why the population is declining, the last several years, a large majority of that has been people that have been moving out of the region to other parts of the United States, so a net domestic out-migration of folks, although in the last few years that trend seems to be improving, and we hope that continues. And then also, jobs. So this slide shows you the total employment in the region going back to 2008. Obviously, it shows the drastic impact of the Great Recession on the regional economy. But what it also shows is the region has really struggled to retain those jobs that we lost as a result of the recession. So these are just a few slides to highlight why we're doing this. They're going into our thinking, they're informing our strategies, and so we just want to be sure that these are good. And let me share we're going to share the vision and the draft goals, but please note these are draft. We're working with an outstanding steering committee as well as a leadership advisory group. So all of this is not set in stone, but these are things that we are working with local leaders in building out as an important part of the plan. The vision for this strategic plan is really important. We take a lot of time and think it through. Because this is really will set the bearings. It will be the true north of this plan. And all of the strategies, all of the actions that are going to be taking place will fall in line with the vision that's being set. And this is the vision that our steering committee has been working towards. Northwest Indiana supports its vibrant and inclusive communities by creating the most dynamic economic environment of the Midwest, fueled by innovation, diversity, and talent. We still have a fantastic team working on this. One of the things I will share with you as well is, and you can expect in the future, this is a coalition of organizations. This plan, as Heather said, is not just led by the forum, but there's a whole wide range of groups that have come together under this banner. This coalition, we are working on an exciting, energetic name for the effort. As when we launch it, or trust me, on the 13th, you will be wowed by the branding that is done. But this coalition will have a name, and it will exist for the long term, over the 5-year horizon. And what we want to do is have folks report out and make sure that they're updating the rest of the region about things that are going on that are part of this 5-year strategic plan. The goals that have been identified, and these are, I would encourage you to think about these as the pillars of this plan. There will be strategies under each one of these. There are in draft form. And there will be various organizations that will take on these strategies. But the goals are pretty straightforward. Business development and marketing, we think is absolutely essential for the region. Entrepreneurship and innovation, we think is additionally very, very important. This, in fact, may be the most significant component. You have some outstanding resources, but there is much more to be done. Infrastructure is absolutely critical, and when we think about infrastructure, we're not just thinking, I know we all just had a phenomenal conversation about investment in roadways, but we're thinking about it in a broader context, of course, infrastructure in terms of roadways, but also in terms of real estate, those types of things when we're thinking about the region. And then when we think about talent, we're thinking about how to grow talent, how to develop the talent base that exists here, how to keep young people here, but also how to attract people into this community as well. And then the final is placemaking. It is absolutely essential. People have options and they can live anywhere they like around the country. We want to make sure that this region is doing everything possible to ensure this is an attractive place. And we're bragging about the wonderful things that exist here. So that's a quick overview about where we are with the vision and the goals. I would share with you one thing that we know for a fact that we're focusing in on and is a big priority, and that is the establishment of the work that you all are doing and Ty has been doing with the establishment of an Economic Development District Board. That is an absolutely essential organization in our minds.
It allows federal dollars to flow into this community that we think in many ways will be used to help fuel a lot of the ideas, a lot of the strategies that are developed. There are groups around the country that have developed economic development district boards that are doing exciting things. They're generating federal dollars, and we want you to do the same here. So with that, I'll conclude my comments. I know we certainly have just a moment or two for a question, but if there are other things you want to share with us, we'd love to have a conversation with you at any time. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you very much. Is Terry Belligan here for the Klein Avenue Bridge? The next thing on the agenda is the presentation on the update on the Klein Avenue Bridge. Thank you very much, Heather, and thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Joyce wants to get back on the phone because I think there's no for the drill.
Do we still have the floor?
No, it's I'm sorry. Sorry, okay.
Go ahead.
Chairman, Commission members, I appreciate and thank you for the opportunity to present our project, Klein Avenue Bridge. I know the importance of time, and we have a lot of information.
This service is provided by freeconferencecall.com.
Provide updates.
Please enter your access code followed by the pound or
Our presentation is about 20 minutes. I asked if we could, we had 20 minutes for the presentation, 10 minutes for questions. And there's a lot of information, I think, that provides a good update. Is it respectfully at this moment asked if I could reschedule to give that enough time to, because I don't want to rush through it. We understand the importance of the Klein Avenue Bridge to Northwest Indiana, and we also, I've got a lot of questions asked of me that I think is in the presentation. So if I could respectfully ask to reschedule, we'll dedicate at least 20 minutes to our presentation, if that's okay.
That sounds great. How about right?
I'm in the business of creating win-win situations, so I know that you're working with your time.
Yep. No, I think that's a great suggestion, and we'd love to have you in September and with the audience, you know, the mayor and the Chicago.
And on that note, I appreciate it. On that note, I will provide my information to Ty. Okay. If anybody has questions about our Klein Avenue project, that they can reach out to me and my colleague Jay Rowe.
So it'll be done by September?
No. This model is done by September.
Just check.
And just to reference, that is a model of the span over the Indiana Harbor Canal. And to the west of that is a 3D printing of the pier and actually a segment of the bridge.
That's great. Thank you, and I'm sorry that the earlier discussion went as long as it did, but that's great.
I know the importance of that. Thank you.
Okay, so next on the agenda is the report of the executive director. New staff introduction.
Just real quick, you met some of our planning staff, new staff last time. If Candy's in the back. Candy Eklund is our new administrative assistant, who's been a great job helping out the administrative staff here. And when you see things come from her, I just wanted you to associate a name with the face.
Excellent. Thank you. That's it for you? That's it for me. Report of the chair, done. Finance and Personnel Committee, George.
We met this morning to review financial status, recommendation of expenses, and approved claims register, and we did that.
Okay, great. Kathy Luther, I saw you. EMPC?
Yeah, so the EMPC did not meet in August. I basically wanted to let you all know, I think this is going to happen in October, but I will confirm it. Based on our letter and a lot of letters that the federal government received on the U.S. Steel Chrome spill, and a lot of the comments were about notification and local coordination. The EPA Region 5 is looking at actually creating a Northwest Indiana specific communication plan for environmental incidences. And so a future EMPC meeting will have the EPA come down and talk to us about this. If we get that confirmed for October, I'll be sending an invitation to all of you so that your emergency communication people are welcome to come because they wouldn't necessarily normally come to an environmental meeting.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. And the next meeting is in September, or are you?
Yes, September 6th, we'll be talking about Chicago wilderness.
Okay, great. TPC, the Technical Planning Committee, Kevin Brightsky.
And environment's always a good meeting, but we'll talk about technical planning now. Since the last executive board meeting on July 19th, the Technical Planning Committee has met on Tuesday, August 14th. During the meeting, the staff reported on progress concerning the development of the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan and public outreach, 2050 plan outreach, the TIP amendments, and the City of Gary's appeal that you just recently heard. That leaves us with just one action left for consideration today, since you dealt with the appeal of Gary that's being programmed in the 2018-2021 Transportation Improvement Program. 30-day comment period on Amendment 16 to fiscal year 2018-2021 Transportation Improvement Program was held on August 13th. No public comments were received, but 3 technical comments were received from FHWA and NDOT. The report can be found on page 10 of your handout. And Charles, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay. The remaining action today is for Resolution 1813, Amendment number 16 to the fiscal year 2018-2021 Transportation Improvement Program, found on pages 11 to 17. Charles Bransky will explain this action. And by the way, the Technical Planning Committee recommends adoption of Resolution 1813.
I'll try to make this a little bit quicker.
Okay.
Resolution 18-13, amendment number 16 is amendment to the current TIP. And it is line items largely with NDOT projects that are scheduled for the 2022 and 2023. Now, as alluded earlier, 2022 and 2023 are not in our TIP. So these projects are illustrative in that they will be shown in our TIP, but the financial part of it will not be included in our TIP. So these are just to give an idea of what's coming down the road. NDOT typically works on a 5 or 6 year policy, projects that are in the mix, and so that's what these are there.
Thank you, Charles. Do we have any questions? Or?
I would entertain a motion from the executive board.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you.
We'll be quicker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next Technical Planning Committee meeting will be on September 11th, 2018. Don't miss it.
Okay. Do you want Dominique to talk about the pop-up events at all? I see her standing there.
Would you explain this?
Sure, of course.
Good morning, Dominique.
Yes, so we are in our second round of public engagement for the 2050 long-range plan rather. And so we have conducted a number of summer pop-up events across the region. So far, we have had pop-up events in Hammond, Cherryville, and Tucumcari. And over the last week, we have had the ability to track 409 responses to our influences and trends that we have developed as a part of the 2050 plan. And so to date, so far, we have received public input in regard to the vision statements and produced the critical paths which were recommended by TPC last month. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I also announced that there's a complete streets workshop coming up fall 2018. Mitch Barloga will be sending you a lot of information on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next is Legislative Committee, Mary Candace.
Hi, I have a request that's for you to schedule a meeting for the legislative committees in the next 2 months.
Okay. Okay. Great, thank you. Local Government Assistance Committee, Will Farrelly?
Yeah, nothing to report as such, but we do have our next meeting on Thursday, the 30th of August at 1:30. Anybody's welcome to come.
Wonderful, thank you. Next is NDOT. Rick?
I think this is still pretty much tracking from last month where we are. Community crossings, the call for projects for 18 began last week, closed Friday the 28th, September, excuse me. Communities will be receiving funds for projects, will be notified sometime late October, early November. We'll begin to issue a call for these projects twice a year. I think we did cover that the last meeting. Issued every January and July as we move forward. You'll only be allowed one award per year. I think we covered that in the last presentation as well. I was out of the room. I think Matt had a phone call, but I think Matt did well in covering that. Local tracks, I think we covered also the last meeting, but again, we'll close that out in about 2 weeks. As you know, it's a grade separation program. The application period closes on the 31st of August. The applications will be reviewed, scored, awarded at the end of September. So 65 widening project, moving on, I'm trying to be quick as well, is rolling along. We hope to have it done this fall. We do have dual lanes open both directions during the day, single lane sometimes at night, and move as quickly as we can on the projects for existing. Beyond that one, it is significant. We'll be working closely with you, and I wish I'd been here to hear some of the debate relative to TV.
You're always welcome.
Yeah, I'm always welcome, yeah. I feel it. Lindsay Quist, as you know, left and went downtown. What a loss that is. But she is actually not lost. She's in central office and doing amazing things already for us. In fact, relative to some things. In fact, she's on the 6th floor of the Government Center if you want to stop and see her sometime. But we also found a replacement who is a veteran of NDOT, been in 4 separate districts, currently works in capital programs in Fort Wayne. Her name is Jessica Miller. I believe she's starting with us. She has an apartment, so she's starting imminently, I know. I think the end of the month. I don't know the exact start date, but she should be at the next meeting. And much like Lindsay, will play an integral role here, probably with me at the meetings to answer relative questions and so on about pending projects, where we are within projects, funding, and so on. So again, the name is Jessica Miller, and she should be on board with us soon. And that's all I have.
Wonderful.
Question. Route 8 going east of La Crosse, I'm going to ask like updates on that because I go through there once a month and that's been closed. I talked to Matt, is he still here?
He's here.
I talked to him last month, but I'd like to know if he thought it might not be ready until November.
No, the project, it was tied to, we had to basically design a whole project in a short amount of time. There's a bridge project in the area as well. We're able to tie it into that bridge project, so they're going to be doing that at the same time. So both projects will be done by the end of September.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Powers. Other commission business.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. I'd like this to be done as general consent. I just reviewed this, and I thought this was the case because I worked on the bylaws committee. I had a chance to review that statute a lot. For weighted voting, there needs to be a proper second. I'd like, if there's no objection, to be shown as a second so that the record is clear that there's no procedural question about the vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any announcements? Bob?
Yes. Next Fridays, August 24th, my chief of police, Dave Colson, has got Lake County prosecuting attorney Bernie Carter to come to 16 plus. So anybody from Lake County, bring your police chief and come and hear how the prosecuting attorney's office operates and bring your questions. He has a golf outing, so he has a limited amount of time. But anybody else that would like to come to that meeting, you're welcome to hear about our prosecuting attorney and what he does.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Don?
Rick, I'd like to just say thank you for the town of Hebron. The work that's been done on 2 and 231 was done in a very professional manner. It's handled the traffic flow and everything else done very well. So thank you very much.
Okay, and Ty?
Just really quick, I was privileged to be, and some of you were there, at the groundbreaking for the data center in Hammond yesterday. Mayor McDermott had to take off, but the governor was in town for that. So very good news for Northwest Indiana, and looking forward to the announcement of the governor who will be with Mayor Freeman Wilson, I think coming up in like a half hour or so for another large investment in the region. So good things continue to happen, and it's good to have the governor up here.
Great. Joe, you need to talk about Pierogi Fest?
I don't know, we've done.
Okay.
I need about 11 months to recuperate.
Okay, great. Anybody else? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Done. Thanks. I know, it's all